So this is part 2 of our video notes from Monday. This is the electron arrangements, orbital diagrams, and orbital drawings. First, we are going to talk about drawing orbital diagrams, and you're going to see very soon that this goes a lot with the electron configuration that we just learned. So now we're going to talk about something that's called the Polyexclusion Principle, which means that there is a max of 2 electrons in each orbital, and they have opposite spins. So those spins we are going to indicate by arrows. Okay, so they have to be opposite like that. One box represents an orbital that can hold 2 electrons, and each arrow represents one of those electrons, and the direction represents spin, as we just said. So the orbital diagram for helium, we have one box because helium only is in the 1s orbital, and then we have 2 electrons because helium is number 2 on the periodic table. So this is our correct orbital diagram for helium. This would be incorrect if we place both of the arrows with the same spin. Now, something called Hund's rule dictates that electrons will fill open orbitals of the same energy before they pair up. Okay, so if we're drawing an orbital diagram here, this box represents 1s, this is 2, and then 2p, as you can see, has 3 boxes because it goes up to 2p6, so we need to fit 6 electrons inside. Okay, so for carbon, which has 6 electrons, and this is our electron configuration, we can draw our 1s right here, 1 and 2. Then we draw our 2s in this box, 1, 2. Then we have 2 2p's to draw. So we go into our 2p box, and we have to start drawing our up arrows first. 1, 2. If we had more, we would draw them like this. 3, 4, 5, 6. But we stopped because carbon only has 6 electrons. Now we're going to draw an orbital diagram for sodium. But first, before we do that, it's really helpful to be looking at our electron configuration as we do this. So let's write it out together. 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, and then our sodium is found at 3s1. So now we can draw our 1s box, our 2s box, then we have our 3 2p boxes, and our 3s box. Now we can start drawing our orbitals, our electrons. 1, 2, we're filling all of these orbitals. Okay, so everything is going to be filled, and then we have 3s. We only have 1 electron there. So this is a prettier version of our correct orbital diagram for sodium. Now take a second in your notes and write the electron configuration and orbital diagram for phosphorus. Okay, let's write out first our electron configuration. So for phosphorus, we have 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, we have 3s2, and then we're ending at 3p3. Now we're going to draw our boxes, 1s2, our 1s box, our 2s box, our 3 2p boxes, our 3s box, and then for our 3p section, just like our 2p section, we're going to have 3 boxes as well. Now, when we're drawing our electrons in, we're drawing our 1s like this. This is another way you can draw arrows, you guys. Just kind of the lazy way. You don't have to add that extra little marking there. Okay, so this is just how I'm going to draw them to save some time. Then we fill in the up arrows first, then the down, and we know that we're continuing here, and then we only have 3 electrons to place in our 3p box. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and that is our answer. Now take a second and try it on your own. We're going to do iron. All right, our electron configuration for iron. We have 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, 3p6, 4s2, and now we're getting into our 3d, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now let's draw out our boxes. We have our 1s box, 2s, our 2p boxes, 3s, 3p, 4s, and now I don't have room, so I'm going to draw my 3d boxes down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we have 10 electrons that can possibly go in our 3d spot. We only have 6 in iron, but that's why we need to draw 5 boxes. So let's quickly fill in these electrons here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now we have 6 electrons that we have to place in our 3D box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we're going to get into orbital drawings. So orbital drawings are how we can show where the electrons are likely to be, because we've talked about in class how Bohr's model is not exactly accurate because the electrons don't go in a circular orbit around the nucleus. So there actually is a range of 3D shapes, 3D models of the atoms that we can use to show where the electrons will end up. So orbitals are shapes within each sublevel. Okay, and these shapes are described by the letters S, P, D, and F, as you are familiar with, and each orbital can only hold a max of 2 electrons, okay? So this is our 1s orbital. As you see, it looks like a sphere, okay? It looks like a circle on paper, but it's really a sphere. It's 3D. Then we have our 2s orbital, which is slightly bigger than our 1s orbital. Keep in mind, each of these can only hold 2 electrons, okay? And then if you think about how when we're drawing those orbital diagrams here, each can only hold 2 electrons, and these right here are all of our p orbitals. This is the first one, this is the second one, and that's the third one. Our p orbitals on paper look like a figure 8 shape, but in real life, you can kind of think of them as 2 balloons, as if they were connected in the middle by the part where you tie them. Then these are what d orbitals look like, but we're not going to get into those too much, but remember how we drew 5 boxes for the d orbitals, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shapes. So every atom will have an overall electron cloud that looks like a sphere. That is the s orbital. And these orbitals help us understand where the individual electrons are likely to be found. Not necessarily, but where we are thinking that they're going to be. So if this is the nucleus right here, you can see that our 1s orbital is this shape right here. It's the smallest shape. It's our lowest energy orbital, as we've been saying in class. Then our 2s orbital is this shape. Okay, it's a sphere shape. It's our next biggest orbital. And then we're getting into the 2p orbitals that are these. They kind of look like balloons that are connected at the nucleus. And then on this big outside piece, we have our 3s orbital, and it just keeps going from there. All right, so take a second and draw a Bohr diagram for carbon. All right, so this is our Bohr diagram for carbon. Now let's write out our orbital diagram. It is 1s2, 2s2, and 2p2. So we know that carbon has 6 electrons, and that's what we place on our Bohr model here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So now we're drawing our orbital diagram, and I know that this looks really crazy, but we're going to walk through it so that it makes sense. Okay, so first we have our 1s orbital. Now we're going to draw our 1s orbital, which is that small circle like we learned a couple slides ago. And here are 2 electrons, because only 2 electrons can be in each orbital. Okay, so that's our first one. That's our 1s. Now we are doing our 2s orbital, which we know our s orbital is a circle shape or a sphere if we could draw 3D. So that is there, and we have 2 electrons in this orbital, 1, 2. So that is done. And now we have our 2p orbitals. Okay, so we're going to draw all of them. So we've got them all in green here. We've got 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now we only have 2 electrons in this 2p orbital. So we are going to draw those anywhere you want, 1 and 2. So that is a very messy drawing of our carbon orbital diagram. All right, this is kind of a long one, but this is our last problem. So we are going to do a practice problem drawing the orbital drawing for phosphorus. The first step is figuring out our orbital diagram. So let's do that. Looking at our periodic table, we have 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, and we end at 3p3. All right, so if we add up all of our superscripts, we see that phosphorus has 15 electrons and is number 15 on the periodic table. So if we are going to start drawing our orbital diagram, first we have to draw our 1s2. Okay, so our 1s orbital is that really small inner sphere. Okay, with our 2 electrons inside, they can be anywhere. Awesome. Next, we have our 2s orbital, which is just a bigger sphere, and those electrons can be anywhere inside of that. Now, we have our 3 2p orbitals. Okay, so I'm going to draw one like this, one like this, and one like this. And we have 6 electrons in there. So I'm just going to make it easy and draw 1 in each orbital. Okay, so that's done. Now we are doing our 3s orbital. Our s orbital is just a big circle. So I'm drawing mine really big. We've got 2 electrons in there. Lastly, we've got our 3p orbitals. So again, we're going to have that p shaped, but they're just going to be a lot bigger. Okay, here's my second p orbital, and here's my last. And we only have 3 electrons in this one, so I'm just going to place them like this: 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is super messy, but this is a really good example of how we would draw orbitals and how we would start to finish. So write down any questions that you may have and present them at the beginning of class tomorrow. Have a good night.